Before you speak, they already know. Before you act, they've already measured you. Before you even sit down, the verdict is in. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. People decide how much respect you deserve in the first few seconds of your presence. Not by your words, not by your intentions, but by your energy. And if you're honest with yourself, you felt it, that subtle shift in the room. The way someone interrupts you mid-sentence, the way your joke gets ignored, but the same joke from another man gets a laugh. The way authority seems to float towards certain men effortlessly, while you have to earn every inch. Why? Because confidence is not what you say you have. It's what others sense you don't need to prove. Most men fail here, quietly, repeatedly, not because they're weak, but because they're visible in the wrong way. They lean forward too much. They explain too quickly. They apologize before anyone is offended. They smile to soften their presence. They rush to fill silence as if quiet itself is dangerous, and the room reads this instantly, not consciously, instinctively. Men are animals wrapped in suits, social creatures wired to detect hierarchy, certainty, hesitation. They don't have to hate you to diminish you. They only need to sense that you want something from them. Approval, acceptance, validation. The moment they feel that, the power dynamic flips. You're no longer an equal. You're no longer unpredictable. You're safe. And safety kills respect. This is the part no motivational speaker will tell you, because it's uncomfortable, because it exposes the game. The world does not reward need. It exploits it. Once they sense that you crave being liked, they categorize you, not out of cruelty, out of efficiency. You're agreeable. You're helpful. You're reliable. You won't push back. A box forms around you, invisible, but airtight. And inside that box, your voice gets quieter. Your presence gets smaller. Your influence evaporates. You become the man people use, not the man they listen to. But here's where the story breaks, because there exists another type of confidence, not loud, not aggressive, not performative. A confidence that doesn't announce itself. It arrives complete. This is the confidence that unsettles people, not because it demands attention, but because it doesn't seek it. It's the man who doesn't rush to speak, who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't react immediately, who lets silence stretch without discomfort. And that silence, it's not emptiness, it's pressure. Others start filling it, over-explaining, joking, justifying, and suddenly, the power has shifted. This kind of man doesn't chase respect. Respect orbits him. Centuries ago, this wasn't self-help. It was survival. In the shadowed courts of Renaissance Italy, one misstep meant exile or death. Men didn't posture. They calculated. Machiavelli observed something chillingly precise. The most dangerous man in the room was rarely the loudest. It was the one who appeared self-contained, the one who could lose approval and remain unmoved, the one who didn't need to be loved to function, the one whose confidence wasn't borrowed from applause. Because love can be withdrawn, admiration can fade. But respect rooted in awe is different. It binds. And today, nothing has changed. Only the battlefield. Offices, meetings, social circles, relationships. The rules are the same. The men who terrify others aren't violent. They're unreadable. And unreadable men cannot be controlled. But here's the question that should make you uncomfortable. What if the very behaviors you were taught to believe make you good are the same ones silently erasing your presence? What if confidence isn't about adding something, but removing what betrays you? Because once you see how this game actually works, You can never unsee it. And in the next part, we're going to expose the first invisible habit that signals weakness before you ever open your mouth. There is a signal you broadcast constantly. You don't notice it, but everyone else does. And once it's detected, everything about how you're treated changes. This signal is not your clothes, not your voice, not your posture. It's urgency, the rush to respond, the need to clarify, the impulse to explain yourself before anyone asks. Urgency is the loudest confession of insecurity a man can make. Think about it. When someone truly powerful speaks, do they rush? Do they scramble to justify their words? Do they chase agreement? No. They move at their own pace. They allow misunderstanding. They let tension hang, because urgency tells a silent story. I need this interaction to go well. I need you to approve. I need control of how I'm perceived. And the moment another man senses that, he gains leverage. Most men are trained into urgency from childhood. Answer quickly. Be responsive. Be polite. Don't make people uncomfortable. So you learn to fill gaps. You learn to soften statements. You learn to over-explain your intentions so no one misreads you. But here's the brutal truth. Men who matter do not explain themselves early. Explanation is a form of submission when it's unrequested. Watch how dominance actually works in the real world. A confident man makes a statement and stops. He doesn't check faces. He doesn't backpedal. He doesn't add disclaimers. The room adjusts to him. An insecure man does the opposite. He speaks, then immediately starts repairing imaginary damage. But maybe I'm wrong. Just my opinion. You know what I mean. I don't want to sound rude. Every one of these phrases weakens the strike, not because the words are bad, but because the timing is wrong. You're negotiating before there's a conflict. And Machiavelli would have recognized this instantly. In the courts, he observed, men who rushed to justify themselves were marked. They were seen as dependent on favor, dependent on mood, dependent on approval, and dependency is powerlessness. The prince who ruled effectively did something counterintuitive. He spoke less, moved slower, reacted later, not out of arrogance, out of calculation, because reaction speed reveals emotional control. When you respond immediately to everything, messages, comments, criticism, disrespect, you teach people that they can pull your strings. They learn where your nerves are. But when you pause, when you let silence breathe, when you delay response without explanation, something unsettling happens. People project meaning. They assume depth. They assume confidence. They assume you're weighing something they can't see. Silence forces others to work, and work creates respect. This is why the man who terrifies others often does very little outwardly. He doesn't dominate conversations. He doesn't prove intelligence. He doesn't chase momentum. He withholds. And withholding is power. Think about the men who have ever made you uneasy. Not violent men, not loud men, quiet men. The ones who didn't rush to impress. The ones who listened longer than expected. The ones who responded with fewer words than necessary. You couldn't read them, and that uncertainty disturbed you, because humans fear what they cannot predict. Most men live in a state of constant emotional availability, always on, always responsive, always reachable. Machiavelli would call this a strategic disaster, because the man who can be reached at all times can be interrupted, controlled, overwritten. True confidence is selective accessibility, not arrogance, not coldness, boundaries, the ability to let moments pass without interference, the ability to let others sit with their own discomfort. the ability to delay gratification, even social gratification. Here's the paradox. When you stop trying to manage how you're perceived, your presence grows heavier. When you stop rushing to be understood, people listen harder. When you stop chasing harmony, respect replaces it. But this creates a new problem, because the moment you slow down, people push. They test, they interrupt, they challenge, they provoke reactions, not because they hate you, but because hierarchy is being renegotiated. And this is where most men fail. They retreat back into old habits. They explain, they soften, they apologize. And the moment passes. But if you stay still inside the tension, if you don't flinch, if you don't justify, something irreversible happens. The room adjusts. And in the next part, we're going to expose why emotional neutrality is more frightening than aggression, and how to develop it without becoming cold or disconnected. Anger is loud, confidence is silent, and silence is terrifying. Here's what most men misunderstand. They think dominance looks like force, raised voices, sharp words, strong reactions. But Machiavelli observed something far more dangerous. The men who truly ruled were not emotional. They were unmoved, because aggression reveals investment, and investment reveals vulnerability. The man who explodes shows his pressure points. The man who reacts emotionally gives others a map of his weaknesses. But the man who remains calm, who doesn't rise to provocation, who doesn't defend his ego, he creates unease. Think about it. When you insult an insecure man, he reacts instantly, he defends, he argues, he tries to win. But when you insult a man who doesn't need validation, and he simply looks at you, pauses, then responds slowly or not at all, your mind spirals. Did I miscalculate? Did I cross a line? Does he know something I don't? This is psychological dominance, not domination through force, but domination through emotional independence. Machiavelli understood this deeply. In political games, the man who reacts emotionally is predictable, and predictability is fatal. That's why rulers learn to master their internal state before attempting to control others, because the man who cannot control himself will always be controlled by those who can provoke him. Most men live in a constant state of emotional leakage. Their face gives them away. Their tone betrays them. Their posture collapses under pressure. They want to appear confident, but inside, they're negotiating with fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being disliked, fear of confrontation. So they overcompensate. They laugh when disrespected. They soften boundaries. They turn seriousness into jokes. And the room reads this instantly, because confidence is not what you express. It's what you withhold. The terrifying man is not expressive. He is contained. He doesn't rush emotion outward. He processes internally. He chooses what deserves a response and what doesn't. And this selective engagement changes everything. Here's a truth few men are ready to accept. People test you not to hurt you, but to locate your limits. A joke at your expense, a subtle interruption, a dismissive tone. These are not accidents, they're probes. And every time you laugh it off nervously, every time you explain instead of pausing, every time you rush to restore comfort, you answer the probe. You say, this is how far you can go. But when you don't react, when you allow the moment to become awkward, when you let silence replace explanation, you reverse the pressure. Now they feel exposed. Now they wonder if they misjudged you. This is why emotional neutrality unsettles people, because they cannot anchor you. They don't know what moves you. They don't know what you value. They don't know how to control the interaction. And humans fear what they cannot control. But here's where many men make a dangerous mistake. They hear this and think confidence means being cold, detached, unresponsive. That's not strength, that's avoidance. Machiavelli did not advocate emptiness. He advocated discipline. The disciplined man feels emotion but does not leak it. He experiences pressure but does not broadcast it. He registers disrespect but chooses when to address it. Timing is power. React too fast and you look needy. React too late and you look weak, but react deliberately, with calm precision. And you redefine the hierarchy. This is why the most terrifying confidence doesn't come from trying to intimidate others. It comes from being self-sufficient internally. You are not hungry for approval. You are not afraid of silence. You are not disturbed by tension. And that freedom radiates. But here's the uncomfortable transition phase no one warns you about. When you first stop reacting, people escalate. They speak louder. They joke harder. They test deeper. Because the old version of you is gone. And they're trying to find the new limits. This is the moment most men panic. They think, I'm losing connection. I'm being misunderstood. I should smooth this over. And they retreat. But if you stay grounded, if you remain calm but present, the escalation stops, and something shifts permanently. Respect replaces familiarity. Attention replaces dismissal. And your presence begins to weigh something. But emotional control alone is not enough. Because there is one final layer of confidence that separates intimidating men from merely composed ones. And it has nothing to do with behavior. It has to do with identity. In the next part, we're going to uncover why men who know exactly who they are and don't advertise it become psychologically untouchable. There is a reason some men cannot be embarrassed, a reason insults slide off them, a reason pressure doesn't bend them. It's not ego, it's identity clarity. Most men don't actually know who they are. They know who they're trying to be perceived as. And that difference is fatal. When your identity depends on how others see you, every interaction becomes a threat. Every disagreement feels like a personal attack. Every misunderstanding demands correction. You defend constantly, because there is nothing solid underneath. But the man who terrifies others doesn't defend his image. He doesn't need to, because his sense of self was built before the room. Machiavelli saw this clearly. The princes who ruled longest were not the most loved. They were the most rooted. They knew their role. They knew their purpose. They knew what mattered and what didn't. So when whispers came, when alliances shifted, when loyalty dissolved, they didn't flinch, because you cannot destabilize a man who is not trying to be liked. Most men outsource their identity. They let social approval tell them who they are. They let compliments inflate them. They let criticism collapse them. That's why their confidence fluctuates daily. But terrifying confidence is consistent. It does not rise with praise. It does not fall with rejection, because it was not built externally. Here's the hard truth. If your confidence changes based on who's in the room, you don't have confidence, you have performance. And performance is exhausting. Watch men who perform confidence. They posture, they talk more than necessary. They overemphasize status, achievements, opinions. They need reminders. The terrifying man needs none. He doesn't signal importance. He assumes it internally. And that assumption shapes everything. How he sits, how he speaks, how he walks away without explanation. He doesn't cling to outcomes. He doesn't chase reactions, because his value is not up for negotiation. This is why men with strong identity often appear indifferent, not because they don't care, but because they are not fragile. They can lose an argument without losing themselves. They can be disliked without collapsing. They can be misunderstood without panic. And this ability unsettles people deeply. Why? Because most men live in fear of social loss, loss of approval, loss of relevance, loss of connection. So when they encounter a man who is not afraid to lose any of it, they sense danger, not physical danger, psychological danger. This man cannot be controlled through approval or rejection. He cannot be nudged through praise or shame. He does not orbit the group. The group orbits him. But here's the paradox that changes everything. Identity clarity is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't argue. It simply exists. And existence is heavy. When you know exactly what you stand for, you stop explaining yourself. When you know what you want, you stop negotiating internally. When you know what you will tolerate, your boundaries enforce themselves. But most men never build this foundation. They skip it. They try to act confident without knowing who is acting. So they crumble under pressure, because pressure exposes emptiness. Machiavelli would say this is why so many men lose power the moment they gain it. They built influence before identity, visibility before substance, reaction before intention, and the world punished them for it. Now here's the uncomfortable question. If someone stripped away your reputation, your social circle, your titles, your validation, who would remain? That answer, or lack of one, determines how terrifying your confidence can ever become. Because until you define yourself internally, others will define you externally, and that makes you controllable. In the next part, we're going to reveal the most counterintuitive principle of all. Why not needing to win makes you unbeatable. There is a strange pattern in every power dynamic. The man trying hardest to win is usually the weakest one in the room, because the need to win exposes need itself, and need is leverage. Most men enter conversations like battles. They argue to dominate. They explain to convince. They push to be right. They believe victory is what creates authority. Machiavelli knew better. In his world, the man desperate to win an exchange often lost the war. Why? Because he revealed his attachment. Watch closely. The man who must prove he's right cannot walk away. The man who must be respected cannot remain silent. The man who must have the last word is already owned by the conversation. True confidence doesn't fight for dominance. It assumes it and moves accordingly. This is why the most intimidating men rarely argue. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't defend every accusation. They don't chase closure. They let others argue with themselves. Because winning an argument is cheap. Winning positioning is permanent. Most men don't realize this. They sacrifice long-term authority for short-term validation. They win the debate and lose the room. They feel good for 10 seconds, then wonder why influence never follows. But the terrifying man understands something deeper. He understands that attention is a currency, and he doesn't spend it carelessly. When he speaks, it matters, because he doesn't speak often. When he disagrees, it lands, because he doesn't react emotionally. When he walks away, it creates weight, because he doesn't chase resolution. This is why indifference, real indifference, not fake, is so powerful, because it communicates abundance. I don't need this outcome. I don't need your agreement. I don't need to be right here. And the moment others sense that, the balance shifts. They lean in. They over-explain. They seek alignment. not because you demanded it, but because they fear losing you from the interaction. Machiavelli would describe this as strategic detachment, not apathy, not coldness, choice, the ability to engage or disengage without emotional cost. And here's where most men sabotage themselves. They confuse confidence with dominance displays. They interrupt. They challenge unnecessarily. They assert opinions constantly. But assertion without necessity is insecurity wearing armor. The terrifying man does not need to dominate conversations. He dominates frames. He decides what matters by what he responds to and what he ignores. Silence becomes a filter. If something is unworthy, it dies there. If something matters, it earns his attention. And others feel this instinctively. They adjust their tone. They become more precise. They choose words carefully, not because they're afraid of you, but because your attention has value. Now here's the critical moment. When you stop trying to win, people will try to provoke you into playing. They'll challenge your competence. They'll question your stance. They'll test your ego, because ego is the easiest lever to pull. And if you bite, you reset the hierarchy. But if you don't, if you let the challenge hang, if you respond calmly or not at all, if you show that the outcome does not own you, you win without competing. This is why Machiavelli warned against being driven by passion. Passion makes you predictable. Predictability makes you manageable. The man who terrifies others is not driven by the moment. He is anchored in something larger: purpose, direction, a personal code, which brings us to the most dangerous shift of all. Because when you stop needing to win interactions, you gain something far more powerful: presence. And presence changes how time itself behaves around you. In the next part, we're going to uncover why slowing down, physically, verbally, mentally, is one of the most dominant moves a man can make. Speed feels powerful, but speed is often panic in disguise. The modern world worships urgency, instant replies, quick opinions, rapid reactions, and most men are drowning in it. They move fast because they're afraid of falling behind. They speak fast because they're afraid of losing attention. They decide fast because they're afraid of uncertainty. But Machiavelli understood something timeless. The man who controls the pace controls the interaction. In every serious power exchange, the dominant figure is slower, not lazy, not unaware, deliberate. Watch high-level negotiations. Watch men who sit at the top of hierarchies. They pause longer than feels comfortable. They speak fewer words than expected. They take time to decide, even when pressured. And this unsettles people, because speed is predictable. Slowness is not. When you slow down, you force others to match your rhythm. And if they can't, they reveal their insecurity. Most men rush because silence terrifies them. A pause feels like exposure, so they fill it. They talk. They justify. They explain. And every word they add weakens their position. The terrifying man does the opposite. He allows silence to stretch. He lets people wait. He gives answers only after thought, not impulse. This creates a subtle dominance, because humans associate slowness with certainty. The man who is unsure rushes. The man who is sure has time. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must never appear hurried. Haste suggested desperation. Desperation invited challenge. This applies everywhere today. Meetings, conversations, decisions, relationships. If you rush to reply to a message, you reveal availability. If you rush to fix tension, you reveal discomfort. If you rush to commit, you reveal fear of loss. And others feel this instantly. The man who terrifies others does not chase momentum. He creates gravity. People adjust to him. They wait for his response. They anticipate his reaction. They feel the weight of his silence. And this has nothing to do with status. It's behavioral authority. But here's the part that separates real confidence from imitation. Slowness must be internal first. You cannot fake calm. Your body betrays you. If your mind is racing, your movements leak it. If your emotions are chaotic, your tone gives you away. So the terrifying man trains his internal tempo. He does not react immediately to stimuli. He creates a gap, stimulus, pause, response. That pause is everything. It is the space where choice lives. It is the space where emotion dissolves. It is the space where power forms. Most men live stimulus-arrow reaction, which means the world controls them. The confident man lives stimulus-arrow observation-arrow decision, which means he controls the world. But slowing down comes with a cost. People will test you. They'll accuse you of being distant, cold, uninterested. They'll push for faster answers, clearer commitments, immediate reassurance, because your slowness removes their leverage. And this pressure reveals something important. Who benefits from your urgency? Who profits from your emotional speed? Once you see that, you stop rushing. And when you stop rushing, you become difficult to manipulate. This is why the terrifying man often seems calm in chaos. Because chaos requires speed, and he refuses it. He lets others burn energy while he conserves it. And energy conserved becomes presence. But slowing down is not the final form, because there is one level of confidence above all others, a level where you no longer need to manage perception at all, where your confidence is so complete, people feel it without understanding why. In the final part, we're going to expose the ultimate Machiavellian truth. Why not needing to be seen is the highest form of dominance. There is a final shift that separates respected men from feared ones. Most never reach it, because it requires letting go of something addictive: visibility, the need to be noticed, the need to be acknowledged, the need to be seen as important. Modern culture trains men to chase attention, post more, speak louder, signal value constantly. But Machiavelli would have warned you immediately. The man who needs to be seen can be managed, because visibility creates exposure, and exposure creates vulnerability. Every time you announce yourself, you give information away. What you value, what you want, what you fear losing. The terrifying man understands this instinctively. He does not disappear completely. He becomes selectively visible. He is present, but not available. Known, but not familiar. Others know of him more than they know him. And that distance creates myth. Think about it. The men who dominate psychologically are never fully accessible. They don't overshare. They don't narrate their process. They don't broadcast intentions. They move quietly. And then results appear. This is unsettling to people, because humans feel safe when they understand the process, when they can track movement, when they can predict outcomes. The man who operates without announcement removes that safety. You don't know what he's doing. You don't know what he's building. You don't know when he'll act. And unpredictability creates respect mixed with caution. Machiavelli understood that rulers who revealed too much invited interference. Opposition formed early, enemies adapted, allies grew complacent. But the ruler who revealed late controlled the narrative. By the time others understood what was happening, it was already done. This principle applies directly to personal confidence. When you stop advertising your intentions, people stop interfering. When you stop seeking recognition, Recognition arrives uninvited when you stop explaining your moves. Your moves gain weight. Most men sabotage themselves by narrating their lives. They seek validation in real time. I'm working on this. I'm planning that. I'm thinking of doing this next. And with every statement, they dilute impact because unfinished things are fragile. The terrifying man protects his work, his plans, his inner world, not out of paranoia, out of respect for momentum. He understands that energy leaks through speech, so he speaks only when it matters. This is why his presence feels dense. He is not empty. He is contained. And containment is magnetic. People lean in. They ask questions. They speculate. And he does not rush to satisfy curiosity, because curiosity is leverage. Here is the uncomfortable realization most men resist. If you need to be seen doing powerful things, you are not yet powerful. Power expresses itself in outcomes, not performance. The men who terrify others are often underestimated at first, quiet, observant, unassuming, and then they move. Decisively, irreversibly, no warning, no drama, and the room replays every past interaction differently. Oh, that's who he is. This is the moment confidence crystallizes, not because you demanded respect, but because your restraint earned it. But here's the final test. When you stop seeking visibility, people may overlook you temporarily. They may underestimate you. They may assume you're passive. This is where most men panic. They think, I'm being forgotten. I need to remind them. And they step back into noise. But if you endure this phase, if you allow the quiet, if you continue building without announcement, you gain something rare, strategic invisibility, the freedom to move without resistance, the freedom to grow without interference, the freedom to choose when to reveal yourself. And when you finally do, it lands harder than any announcement ever could. This is why the most confident men don't chase presence. They arrive with it. But there is one final realization that completes the transformation. Because terrifying confidence is not about fear. It's about inevitability. And in the final part, we're going to reveal the last Machiavellian truth. Why men who become inevitable no longer need to assert anything at all. There is a point where confidence stops being a tactic, a point where it no longer needs maintenance, a point where it no longer reacts to the world at all. This is the final form. Inevitability. The most terrifying men are not feared because they threaten. They are feared because they cannot be stopped. They don't argue their value. They don't demand recognition. They don't seek permission. They move forward regardless of who approves. And that certainty rewires every interaction around them. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He saw that power did not belong to the loudest, the strongest, or the most loved. Power belonged to the man whose trajectory could not be altered, because once a man becomes inevitable, resistance becomes pointless. Think about what truly unsettles people. Not aggression, not arrogance, momentum. A man who keeps moving even when ignored. A man who keeps building even when doubted. A man who does not slow down for approval or speed up for validation. He doesn't wait for alignment. He creates it by moving. Most men live conditionally. I'll act once I'm confident. I'll speak once I'm respected. I'll move once I'm ready. And so they never move. The terrifying man does the opposite. He acts first, quietly, consistently, and confidence follows as a byproduct. Because confidence is not a feeling, it is evidence. Evidence that you trust yourself enough to proceed without consensus. This is where all the earlier principles converge. Silence, slowness, emotional control, identity clarity, detachment from winning, strategic invisibility. They all serve one purpose: to remove friction between decision and action. Once that friction is gone, you accelerate, not outwardly, internally, and others feel it. They sense that you are not waiting, that you are not stuck, that you are not seeking reassurance. They realize you are already in motion, and suddenly their opinions become irrelevant, because opinions cannot stop momentum. This is why inevitable men rarely threaten others. They don't need to. Threats are for men who need cooperation. The inevitable man assumes nothing. He advances anyway. Machiavelli warned that power is lost when a man becomes dependent on consensus, because consensus can be withdrawn, but inevitability cannot. It exists independently of approval, and this is the final psychological shift. You stop asking, "How am I being perceived?" and start asking, "What am I building?" The first question traps you in other people's minds. The second frees you into your own. This is why terrifying confidence feels calm. It has direction. The man who knows where he's going does not argue about the path. He walks it, and people either follow or step aside. But here is the final paradox. Inevitability is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not warn. It does not explain. It simply shows up again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Consistent, unaffected, unmoved. And over time, resistance collapses. People stop challenging you, stop testing you, stop questioning your presence, because the outcome is no longer in doubt. You will continue. And that certainty terrifies them, not because you dominate them, but because you do not need them. This is the deepest Machiavellian truth. The most powerful position a man can reach is not being feared, not being loved, but being unavoidable. When your confidence no longer asks, no longer reacts, no longer performs, when it simply exists through action, you stop managing perception entirely, and the world adjusts around you. That is terrifying confidence, not noise, not force, not performance, direction.